Hello everyone and welcome back to Cooking and Kids. I guess by the name of this airline you already know which country we're going next. It's remarkable how far you can get in just 12 hours. This is the beauty of traveling today because you can literally fall asleep and wake up the next morning on the other side of the globe, on the entirely different continent and in a completely different setting. This particular trip was many years in making, and I'm finally here visiting family and exploring this beautiful country called New Zealand. After the good night rest, I'm going to reconnect with my cousin over a healthy homemade breakfast. It was only appropriate to break the bread together after not seeing each other for such a long time. But right after the breakfast, Zora made sure to put me to work. In no time, I was delivering goods around Auckland.
It's crazy. I didn't dream that coming here in New Zealand, I'll have the opportunity to drive on the wrong side of the street. And not just that I'm driving, the very next day I arrived, I'm also driving a truck. And here's my cousin Zora over there who nearly had a heart attack. But I think we're gonna survive. We're picking up something today and here I am driving a big truck on the wrong side of a street.
Naturally, it's not the wrong side of the street. It is just that in New Zealand, everybody drives on the left side of the road. After running a few chores, we were off to see Auckland's jewel park called Cornwall Park. They call it the urban oasis, making it a great place to connect with nature and to explore. The park is located near the heart of Auckland. This is a large area covering nearly 670 acres, featuring centuries-old heritage sites, wide open spaces, and long mature tree avenues. Cornwall Park is renowned for its landscape design and a wide variety of mature trees. The park is here largely thanks to Sir John Logan Campbell, who on June 10, 1901, donated 230 acres to a private trust to help form this public park. Did you know that there are 31 parks in the Auckland region alone? There are 13 national parks in New Zealand, 3 in the North Island and 10 in the South. But along with the adjacent One Tree Hill domain, Cornwall Park forms the largest green space in Auckland. Importance of city parks will only continue to grow as they provide natural environment, aesthetics, and recreational benefits to its citizens. Parks are crucial and complex elements of communities and cities. When adjacent to residential areas, green spaces have shown to create healthier neighborhoods. Back in 1890s, when this park was still a farm, it produced cattle, sheep, wool, and produce. Initially, the park area was cultivated by Maori people. The park has been a farm for many generations. Parts of it were even leased out at first. But in 1920, the trust board elected to operate it directly. This was a phenomenal concept to incorporate park and the farm into area that will benefit the city. With more than 350 species and 8,000 trees, Cornwall Park is a paradise for tree lovers. Me being one of them. This is so wonderful. For me, it's hard to resist climbing the trees because as a child, I spent most of my childhood in all sorts of fruit trees, cherry trees in particular. I was not the only one who felt playful around these beautiful giants. My cousin Zora could not resist as well. This was a completely new experience for me because this is the first time I see a working farm combined with park. Right next to the pasture and grazing cattle was this beautiful apple orchard, extending to the area full of blossoming cherries. It is most encouraging to see that other countries are incorporating this concept into their urban areas. Earlier this year, I met with the city officials of my town of Temecula to discuss possibility of replacing some of the decorative trees in our parks with the fruit-producing trees. I'm pleased to say that concept was well received and the city said yes. Unfortunately, logistics and the red tape is still holding us from the actual progress. I remain hopeful and extremely excited because this particular orchard will be planted right next to the apartment complex, which is designed for lower income families, meaning the children in these apartments will have the access to fresh fruit. At some point, Sir John tried introducing olive trees and vines in this park. Records show that he imported 5,000 European olive trees from South Australia and over 11,000 grapevines. While olive trees and vines didn't do really well in this region, sheep did, and it continues to do so. The only thing that could make it better is the fact that Auckland and its parks are surrounded by water, bounded on the east by a South Pacific Ocean and on the west by a Tasmanian Sea. We had such a wonderful time in this beautiful park, and we'll continue to explore park areas in Auckland. But for now, we are heading off to the city. Did you know that 75% of New Zealanders live within 10 kilometers of a coastline? And it's not surprising because a whole New Zealand looks like one big coastline. In one of the future episodes, I will go in more depth about downtown Auckland, but for now, we're just going to take a few snippets. New Zealand features about 15,000 kilometers of coastline. out of which 3,200 belong to Auckland region. This extensive coastline makes it the 9th largest in the world. Auckland is known as a city of sails. Needless to say, sailing is extremely popular in this region. The magnificent red painted wrought iron fence, ornamental gates and lamps were built in several stages between 1913 and 1923. These beautiful gates are connected to one of the most turbulent periods of Auckland's history, the waterfront strike of 1913. After a month, the strike collapsed and the lamps were lit for the first time on March 12, 1914. The Auckland port is located right in the heart of the downtown. In the past decade, Auckland has emerged as a vibrant Pacific city with a visit-worthy cultural attractions and a cosmopolitan dining scene that rivals those of Sydney and Melbourne. Since the 1990s, New Zealand has experienced significant growth in its population of Chinese people. These people have brought with them their culture and in particular their food, which is a great news for me. This was our lunch of the day and my inspiration for today's recipe, because this was a very healthy, light and delicious meal that I want to try to recreate together with you. Early Chinese settlers brought with them their culinary traditions and ingredients, shaping the foundation of Chinese cuisine in New Zealand. As the Chinese community grew and diversified, so did the Chinese restaurant scene.
The food was excellent.
Now let's go and try to make the soup similar to the one we had for lunch. The soup was delicious and it looked very complicated. It had so many different flavors happening at the same time, and one would think this is too hard to make. Well, it's not. As long as you have a very good broth, rest is just a matter of playfulness and fun. The key to this dish is a very strong homemade bone broth. As you might notice, most of these bones have the bone marrow in it, which will bring a lot of flavor to our soup. I'm going to roast them for maybe an hour. You can do this even longer. But what this does, it's supposed to enhance the flavor. Oh, it's so heavy. The next step will be making the broth out of these bones. And since we are going through this process, we're going to make enough bone broth that we can freeze and have it for the multiple dishes. You're going to need a big stainless steel pot. I would suggest using stainless steel and avoiding aluminum, especially because this particular broth needs to cook for hours. We're going to set the bones in a pot and then we're going to add water. If possible, add filtered or spring water because this will definitely enhance the flavor of your broth. Once we have all this done, we're gonna let the broth boil for hours. And if you notice, I haven't added anything to this point except the water and salt. And we've been cooking this broth for about 3 hours. Now it's time to add vegetables and other herbs. Obviously, we could have added these herbs from the start, but considering the broth will cook anywhere between 4 to 6 hours, I didn't want these vegetables to get overcooked. I'm adding a lot of ginger cubes to this soup, but also carrots, bay leaves, garlic, and many other vegetables and herbs will be great. I normally cook my broth until the broth gets this cloudy texture. I would let it cool and then I would add it into containers to freeze for the future recipes. This step is simple, but the cleanup is not. It takes a little time to get the kitchen all cleaned up after you've been making broth for a few hours, but it is so worth it because you will have enough broth to make a number of different dishes. Now, once you had your broth made, you can freeze a bunch of it in small packages like this. And if you're serving a small portion to a family of 2, you can just take 1 portion, or if you want to make a little bit extra, we're going to go with 2. So basically, all that needs to happen right now is just to thaw the broth, and I'm going to enhance it with just a little bit more ginger and garlic, and then we're going to warm up our noodles, and pretty much the soup is done. We also pre-cooked some of the beef. I just want to add a little more protein to the soup, but my favorite part are these tendons. They really make the broth rich and they're so good for you. So all steps and things that you can do in advance. For instance, the boiled beef, which I'm going to add some of it to soup tonight, and tomorrow I'm going to use the rest of the beef to make homemade tamales. Beside beef, I will also add some fresh mushrooms, and you see these scallions. We're going to add some of that as well. You can cut your mushrooms any way you like, and you can use as many as you wish. This carrot is getting old, so I'm going to use some of this for the soup, just to add a little more flavor and to add some color. Ginger is something that I love in my soups, so I'm going to add a little extra. And I'm going to slice them very thin so that once they're boiled, I can actually eat them. Because if you make them too thick, ginger can be kind of rough. It's very intense in flavor, and not everybody likes it. So this is my way of getting a lot of ginger in. You can never have too much ginger because ginger is so healthy for us. Garlic is another healthy ingredient and another component that will make the soup so delicious and again so healthy. Once the broth is starting to boil, now you can taste it and see if there are any other flavors that you might want to add. I'm going to add a little bit of fish sauce. Now that soup is almost ready to boil, we're going to add ginger, garlic, and carrots. Once this boils, I'm going to add the mushrooms, and onions will be the last, because onions, we don't want to cook onions too much. We want them to keep this beautiful green color, and we want the onion flavor to be nice and fresh. Okay, I'm going to cover it so that it boils sooner, and I also brought the eggs out, but I changed my mind. It's later in the evening and I don't want to have an egg for dinner, but if you remember, in a restaurant when we had our soups, they also served half an egg on it. So eggs are optional, so we could do that, but since it's late, I'm not going to do it. But if you do add an egg to your soup, can you imagine how much more nutrients you're getting in that meal? You're getting all the nutrients from the boiled bones, you're getting all the nutrients from herbs and the vegetables that we have cooked in this broth, from the noodles, and if you add a little egg and some sort of a protein on it, you have a perfect meal. The soup doesn't need to boil for too long. 5 minutes is a maximum. So at this time, again, we're just checking to see if it's salty enough, that it has enough pepper, that you're adding. If you like spicy stuff, you can add some spiciness or anything else that would make the broth to your liking. I'm going to add a little bit of black pepper. And I'm also thinking about adding a little bit of a cayenne pepper, just to give her a little kick. When it comes to noodles, it's per your preference once again. These are pre-cooked soft noodles. They're just ready to be warmed up. And these two are pre-cooked but they are dry. So either one of these would work. You can also use all sorts of rice noodles or anything that your body likes, because a lot of people can have gluten. Some of them come like these. These are pre-cooked. They are moist noodles and they're just ready to be put in a soup, or you can have the noodles that are dry. Both work really good. If the broth is ready, so I'm just gonna add mushrooms and I'm gonna add these onions. I'm gonna leave just a few for the decoration. Okay, and then we are going to add our noodles. I like a lot of noodles and this broth is really rich. So I'm gonna add all 4 of these. Mix up just a little bit. And this process takes less than 3 minutes and we are ready to serve. So I'm just waiting for soup to boil one more time. And I brought some of these fresh basil leaves from home. And I'm gonna chop up some of these and add to it, because of course we have ginger, we have garlic, and basil is another great thing. This basil does not look all that great because it's December in California, so basil is not at its prime. But what matters is that the flavor is there. So I'm gonna just add this too. I'm gonna leave just a little bit and add it to these onions because I want to garnish my bowl with some of these. We are ready to serve. So I'm just going to grab some noodles. Okay, and then I'm going to garnish them. Right, a little bit of this beef and some of broccoli sprouts. This is something that I like, so I want to add some good fat to my soup. So I'm gonna go with some avocado, and then we're gonna pour the broth around it. All that's left is to add the broth around it. Few final touches just to make our dish pretty, and also I'm gonna add a little bit of the sweet and sour hot sauce to add a little bit more zest to it. And here you have it. This is also a good time to add basil and scallions. Okay, I can never have enough of herbs, so let's garnish it, and there you have it. That was our healthy recipe of the day. At least 50% of New Zealanders are considered as healthy eaters. This is partially due to good weather, fertile land, and abundance of quality meats like lamb, pork, and venison. Ocean, rivers, and streams provide healthy salmon, crawfish, bluff oysters, mussels, scallops, and other seafood. And let's not forget abundantly produced sweet potatoes and kiwis. New Zealanders are known to be very outdoorsy and active nation. Work culture here is a bit different than in the United States. People here rarely work late hours or on the weekends. Perhaps that's what explains why their gardens look like this. All women in our family are great gardeners, but Zora is taking gardening to a whole nother level. not just because she's skillful, but because the climate and soil here is ideal for growing flowers, fruits, and vegetables. Annual seasons are reversed here from the most of the world. I left California in October, and just that in 24 hours, I have left the fall and arrived in spring. So this year, I got to enjoy the spring blossom twice. New Zealanders understand the importance of balancing work and play. Enjoying outdoors through sports or simply by gardening, it's a big component of their everyday life. Through my charity, I've been trying to bring attention to the importance of this balance and to encourage young families in particular to incorporate more outdoor activities into their everyday living. As a product of that, we would all enjoy much healthier lifestyles, not to mention all the delicious food that would come as a product of our playing outdoors.